Okay, so I'm gonna record this because it's in like 10 days your exam. So right now, just if you want to put in the chat the answer, go ahead. You don't need to take too many notes, right? Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so state what is meant by, what I'll do is I'll copy a picture. So on chapter 11, statistical sampling and non-statistical. So probabilistic is like statistical, non-statistical is non-probabilistic. Is the same thing. But can someone tell me what's the difference between like statistical sampling and non-statistical? Just like an overview. Like just explain to me what's probabilistic versus non-probabilistic. Like if I've never heard of this topic, like the simplest thing. Okay, so Sarah says probabilistic is random sampling. Yeah, non is based on auditor's judgment. Exactly. So for stat, that you want to ensure that every member non-zero chance of being selected. And then non-stat, it's that it's based on the auditor's judgment. And because it's based judgment, um, so can someone tell me like why we would use stat or non-stat like in the like if you're working for a company and you're like, oh, would you rather use stat or non-stat? Like why would someone be like, I'm gonna use stat versus non-stat in my day-to-day life when I'm working? Someone has a clue? Will the answer to be yeah? So LG, I'll post the answers and I'll post the recording later. Okay, so I'll take the answer, the question. Um, so sometimes when you wanna, okay, so like one of the projects I've been working on at work was that we were doing the acquisition of like a huge boat, and then we were trying to find the cost of it, and then we're also trying to find how much is it going to be the incremental cost if something goes wrong, right? So there's a lot of things that could go wrong: inflation, construction risk, companies go bankrupt, right? So there's 100 risk, and we're not going to be like, okay, so every risk has one chance of 100 of being selected. There's some that we believe that has more occurrence of being selected. So we'll take maybe like 5 risks out of the 100, and we're gonna say, well, I think these are the most relevant risks to the current environment, right? So that's based on the judgment. And so it doesn't mean that if we're taking statistical sampling versus non-statistical, non-statistical will be less precise. It's really just based on what you're doing. So both are good. But really what I want you to understand is that it's these definitions for both. Okay. So what is meant by representative sample and explains importance in sampling audit population. So maybe I'll do this one because it should be pretty easy. If sample is subset, can't write, subset of population. And so we're trying to take a little sample, extrapolate it to the whole population. Can someone tell me um, why we're doing this? What's the purpose of doing this? Like when we're doing audit, why are we doing this? Yeah, so Drup says it's not possible. Well, it is possible to use. Sometimes it is possible, but like because of time constraint and money, not possible to use whole population. Or also because it allows, right, the purpose, the real purpose is evaluation and it reduces of bias. Okay. So explain the major difference between statistical and non-statistical sampling. What are the three main parts of statistical and non-statistical method, right? So we kind of went over that, but like, so just more on the methodology. That is formulas and selection, the sample size, and then non-stat. So that would be on, just like Sarah said, auditor's judgment. Okay. And so what are the three parts of statistical and non-statistical sampling that are both common when we're both using this methodology? Do you guys know? Like I said, I'm using stat and non-stat. Three steps I'll be doing are the same for both. Start, it's random. So um, those are methods, right? So there's random interval MUS, which is part of it, right? part of the selections. But like in terms of methodology, what are the same between non-stat and stat? Okay, so maybe I'll write because it can be pretty precise. So it's both you have to do some planning, sample selection, and evaluation of the results. Okay. And so if they're asking you how to do it, well, give me an example of random sampling. Well, explain how you would go for it. Well, you have to put these words in. Okay. And also, um, right here it's auditor's judgment and it's qualitative. So, remember the example I was giving with the boat, the construction of boat, and then we would look at other risks. It's a qualitative because what happens that we'll be with like professionals, it would be engineers, whatever, and then we're going to be asking them which risk do you think is the most important on this list, and they'll tell us this, that, right? It's not quantitative, but it's qualitative. So that's why here in this part, non-stat, we would use a lot of qualitative aspects to it. Okay, are we good for that? Okay, so explain what is met by block sampling and describe how an auditor could obtain 5 blocks of 20 sales invoice from a sales journal. So what is block sampling, guys? Block sampling. Like if I ask you like what's the difference between systematic and block sampling, they're not the same thing. What is block sampling? So picking the first item and closing the rest in the sequence. Yeah, I can say. And choosing the rest in a sequence. Yeah. So maybe Sarah, I'll ask you this. When do you think is the best time to do block sampling? Like, why would be the specific reason, and like, when would we do it? Yeah. So for cutoff testing, and which period do you think? Like each quarter, the first day of the year, last day of the year end. Okay. So yeah. So we would try to get maybe perhaps a little bit beginning of the year end and the beginning of the new year. So let's say we're taking December 15 to maybe like January 15, right? So to see maybe if there's any closing entries are made. So block sampling would be continuous of blocks. Okay. And so like in this case, what would happen is that let's say you want 5 blocks of 20 sales invoices. So you could have like one block that is you have maybe like one block. Sorry. You have maybe one block that's in December to January, and then maybe another one that's right before that when there's the company's busy, right? So you might use that segmentation and you would do the 5 times in total. But each one of them has to be like 20 consecutive invoices from the same block. Okay, so distinguish between a sampling error and a non-sampling error. So maybe like, what is a sampling error? So what's a sampling error, guys? Isn't sampling error when the sample isn't properly chosen, so they get a wrong conclusion? Yes. So it doesn't have to be because the sample isn't proper. It could be other uh, mistakes, but it's when the result. Okay. And so how can you reduce this? Let's say that they have a mistake. What would you go? How would you go for it? So they tell you that your sample is not reflective of the population, and you realize that after. And so how would you, what would you do to mitigate this next time? There's two things you could do. Yeah. So iPhone 10 and Sarah, you're absolutely right. So increasing sample size, and you could use more sampling. Maybe the one that you have been taking was on the adequate one, so we have to change. By the way, you guys can see my screen, right? That I'm writing on in blue right now. Because it doesn't say like it's in red yet. Okay. Maybe I'm just used to Teams because in Teams it's all red. Okay. So what's a non-sampling error? So it's when you do, it's not about the results, but it's about the methodology that you're using is not adequate, right? Or not just the methodology, but the way that it's being done is not following the methodology. So just assuming that, let's say you're doing the methodology, you're putting all the instructions, but it's someone that, let's say, never took an accounting exam. It's an intern that comes and does it, right? So makes a mistake, but like on paper, it's fine. And so to do that, like, what could you do to reduce the non-sampling error? How about this? Yeah. So Shanjeev, I'll post it on YouTube. post it on YouTube because your exam is like 10 days, and by the time that um you're watching this and you're watching the day before, you're gonna be in a totally different place. So right now, just guys, please participate because I'm not asking you to write notes. Just focus on answering. Yeah, so better audit, improve. So would be better audit training, like more supervision. Hmm. I would put effective audit procedures because we're kind of saying that here they're supposed to be already well done, but it's just that there's sampling process that has not been done well. So it's there, but it's not well executed, right? So it's the procedures are not well done. So it would be more supervision on the procedures, let's say. Okay, so we're good for that. Question 5. So define what is meant by sampling risk. The sampling risk applied to non-statistical sampling in US and distributed sampling explained. So we talk about sampling risk. So and so yes, it does apply to both. Okay. So let's say there's a sampling risk between statistical and non-statistical. What happens after? Is it the same outcome for both as an auditor? Like if you see that statistical, there's sampling error, and the not statistical, there's a sampling error. The way that you would face, is it the same thing or no? So let's say from stat, so you have like MUS sampling can be quantified techniques. However, non-stat is so for stat it could be controlled, and you could look at it like in a percentile way. Um, if you have a mistake, you could have like higher confidence and lower confidence. Um, but if it's non-statistical, like let's say for the risk of like it's a qualitative risk, like let's say inflation or a company goes bankrupt for the boat construction, well, you can't really do anything. There's no formal you can't quantify that since it's qualitative. Um, so yeah, so you would rather do stat, right? Because then if there's sampling risk, you could increase the percentile level of confidence, and then you could play with those numbers. But if it's non-stat, you cannot play with those numbers. You have to like restart. Sampling risk. Okay. So sampling risk and sampling error, it's not the same thing because the sampling risk is the risk that the conclusion is not, it's more like a prevention method rather the sampling error. It's like after you're done it, there's literally an error. The risk is like prevention because then you can say like, look, what can I do to mitigate this for last time, for next time? But um, sampling error is just that there's a mistake somehow, right? And it could be like when you're doing it or it's not adequately done. So it's kind of a sequence. You have a sampling risk, and then that'll be a sampling error. Okay, so question 6. Yep. Define stratified sampling and explain its importance in auditing. How could an auditor obtain a stratified sample of 30 items from each of the three strata in the confirmation of accounts receivable? So if maybe someone could tell me that, like how would you do it? How would you guys do these? Or like, let's say if you guys want to use stratified sampling for Canada, how would you guys go for it? Let's say I want you to give me stratified sample of 30 people in Canada. How would you do it? No one wants to try that question? Is it just too easy or too hard? That's my question. I'm not sure if you. Okay, so looks like I'm gonna have to answer that. So like for stratified sampling, what you're gonna do in this case is that okay, so let's say we're gonna take Canada for stratified sampling. You guys do know that there's like what 34 million in the population of in Canada. I'm not sure, but you would say like maybe like let's say Quebec is 8 million. So you do 8 million out 34, then you multiply by 30 people, and that would maybe give you like 9 people. So 9 people for Quebec, but let's say I don't know, let's say Alberta, there are only 2 million people, 2 million out of 34. That's maybe only 2 people that would be representative on that sample of 30 people. And so in this case, what we want to do is take the accounts receivable, in confirmation accounts receivable, right? So then you will look like, okay, so how is my account looking? Is there like three accounts? So maybe it could be like big, big account. Oops. It'd be like big accounts, medium accounts, and small accounts. And so maybe this one represents 10%. This one would represent 20%, and this one 70%. And so you would use 10% times 30, and then this times 30, and then times 30, bang, right? And then that's how many you would get for each. All right, you good? Okay, next questions. Question. What are the two types of sample random sample selection? Which of the two methods is used often by otters and why? So there's two ways. So there's random selection and there's systematic selection. So random selection is that everyone has a chance of being picked. And so you would just use a randomly given number. And systematic selection would be so which one do you guys think others would use most? Random selection or systematic selection? Yeah, so Drup, why do you think we would use more systematic? Equal chance. Well, in this case, random number selection has more of an equal chance, right? Because it's randomly generating numbers from everything. But here, if we're taking systematic selection, we do have that non-statistical probability of being there, right? Um, so you're using like a little bit of your judgment, but even if you're doing a systematic, because you're like, oh well, we'll start with number 5 or 6 or 7. So the reason why is because it's more structured and as it's a systematic, um, and it's easier to document and replicate, right? Instead of just being random. Okay, so describe a systematic sample selection. Explain how an auditor would select 40 numbers from a population of 2,800 using this approach. What are the advantages and disadvantages, right? So I think by now you guys understand like how this would work. So you would take like 2,800 divided by 40. That gives you 70. And then you would say, you would take like, let's say 5 and then 35 and then always plus 70. Okay, so maybe here, can you guys tell me the advantage and disadvantage? I kind of said the advantage before. The advantage is simple, easy to Gate, spread, sample. What's the disadvantage? Advantage is that okay, because we're taking each like that. So let's say there's a situation where there's a bias because every like let's say 70 invoice is from a big vendor, then you're only getting big vendors. Okay. Distinguish between random selection and statistical measurement. State the circumstances under which one can be used without the other. So maybe let's start with then was it on statistical? And so here we did say that it's and what's the purpose? It's to bias. Well, statistical averages, charts, percentile, and what's the purpose? Patterns make okay. So now what next question would be random and can someone tell me like what's the difference? So what does it mean when I have random selection without stat measurement? Like when would I use it? maybe this might be too deep. So to ensure, but data, right? And then stat. So when you're using statistical, it's because you want to here you have the data and need to analyze it. Okay, so that's how you would differentiate both. Okay, and make informed decision. Are we good for that? Yep. Okay, so next question. Describe what is meant by a sampling unit. Uh, Explain why the sampling unit for verifying the existence of recorded cells differs from the sampling unit for testing for the possibility of omitted cells, right? So what's a sampling unit, guys? Guys and girls. What is a sampling unit? Yep. So drip, you're right. Okay. And so what would be the sampling unit for verifying the existence of recorded cells? What would it be? What would it be? Maybe I want to check this if for verifying the existence of recorded cells. What item would I look? What item? Invoices. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so we would. Okay. How about for that's a bit tough part. What do you guys think this is? Maybe I'll write it. Would be customer accounts, right? We look at, oh, well, look, we're looking at all of the invoices. But are we missing something? Let's look at our accounts. Well, actually, Costco's a big buyer from us, right? And I don't see any of their invoices, so we should go check out all Costco invoices. So it would be more your customer account you would look at. Okay, are we good for that? Okay. Okay, so explain the difference between an attribute and an exception condition. State the exception condition for the following audit procedure. The duplicate sales of yours have been initiated. Performance of external location. Hmm. Okay, so what's an attribute? What is so what's an attribute, guys? Hmm. What is an attribute? What is an attribute? You want to try? Guys alive. Okay, so an attribute is procedure. And how you can look at it is it there or not? Okay, so I'll go with the example after. And then exception condition is the deviation. So in this example, what would be the exception condition? The then here would be Okay, so here the attribute is you're looking at the required initialing. Yes or no, do they have it? And the exception condition, so when you're referring to the deviation, is that they don't have the required the absence of it, right? Of initiating the duplicated style invoice. Okay. Okay, so they distinguish between the point estimate of the total misstatement, the likely misstatement, and the true value of the misstatement in the population. So what's the difference between, okay, so yeah, so 12, so point estimate. So what is that? And then the true, so what's the difference between both guys and girls? The estimate, uh, total misstatements in pop based on sample, so that's when you're extrapolating it. Then you have true value of misstatements, actual amounts of misstatements if you tested the whole population. Okay. Okay, so this one you would use a sample, and this one you would use everything. Explain what is meant by analysis exception and discuss its importance. So what is oops, no, exceptions? Sure. So jobs is searching for something specific in the population. Exactly. So what you're searching is the reason, the cause for this deviation in the sample, right? So how would you do that, Jup? So you would look at the nature, cause, and potential impact on the overall population. Okay. Okay, and its importance lies in the issues. Okay. So why is it difficult to determine the appropriate sample size of MUS? How should the auditor determine the proper sample size? So not on the quantitative side, because when you guys do MUS, like there's if you look at my videos, there's like a format that you have to use, but qualitatively, like what would it be? So the difficulty is in okay, because the difficulty is balancing the desired level. Okay, so you want to balance the desired level of confidence, right? Right. Best thing is to have 100% level of confidence, but that's not really possible because you have to test everything, acceptable risk of incorrect conclusion, and tolerable misstatement level, and all of these are not going to be like either 100% or zero because one, cost, and two, time. And so what you could do is that you could use the tables, um, and then it'll show you like if you want this acceptable level of confidence, then you would have to choose your sample should have to be your sample size should be, let's say, 10 if your population is like 1,000, right? So that's why we have the table, so you guys don't have to calculate yourself, but using the table, so it'll give you the level of confidence that is standard around if you do it or someone else does it. Okay. So, what alternative course of actions are appropriate when a population is rejected using non-statistical sampling for test of details? When should each option be followed? So let's say you do reject it. What are the three things that you could do? And I've mentioned two out of the three. They tell you your sample is not reflective of your population. There's a mistake. What can you do next year for the audit, right? Because let's say you did something and then you realize that in real life, that doesn't really occur. So next year, what are you gonna do? Three things. I know someone said the answer before. I think it was Sarah. Sarah, I need you back. Need you back with an answer. No, you can do it. About Jupe, what do you think, Jupe? What are three things that you could do? Yes. So increase sample size. What else? I mean, oh, then the scope. So these are three things that you could do. Okay. So I'll let you guys read this. I'm gonna come back in like 2 minutes. Just grab some more water because as you can see, I've been drinking a lot of water. Yeah, so just focus on just take these off. Just A and B. Okay. So for each, think of what is the assertion. Okay, for each, right? Just what are the assertions for each? Okay, so read this, and I'll be back in 3 minutes. Okay, so let's go through them and you guys give me the assertions. So funding costs the sales journal entries the balance with the general ledger. What assertion is that? Accuracy, is that your final answer? Okay, so Sarah says accuracy and completeness. So Sarah, why would you say completeness? Drew, do you think it's just accuracy or it's accuracy and completeness? Because you're tracing the journal back to the books, exactly, right? So there's the word trace. So Drew, be careful because whenever we're doing the accuracy, yeah, but we're tracing it back. So when you're tracing, it's completeness. To review all sell transactions for reasonableness. What would that be? What would be the second one? Number two. So we have occurrence from truth. Is there any other answers? Accuracy and occurrence. Any last answer? So I can tell you accuracy, yeah, because we're testing the dollar value. And it would be valuation. And the reason why is because we're looking at the reasonableness, right? Is it how it's valued on the transaction? Is it actually supposed to be like that, approximately? But we're not looking at currency or completeness because it doesn't tell you which direction we're going, right? It's just telling you review all the sell transactions for reasonableness. That's it. Next one. Select a sample of recorded sales from the sales journal and trace the customer name and amount to the duplicate sales invoice and the related shipping document. So what would that mean? What would this one be? Number three. Currents. Are you sure, Emily? Completeness. Okay, so I'll give it to you. Occurrence completeness. It's completeness because we're tracing. This word makes it its completeness. And if we're doing occurrence, it would be the word vouching. Okay? And make sure that you know that for the exam because otherwise you will lose all your words. So yeah. And then one more. Droop. Can you complete it? What's the last word I'm looking for? Last assertion. Accuracy, yes. Nice. Steve. Okay, so here trades a shipping document to the related duplicate sales invoice. Right, so I think you guys might not understand that this is complete this. How about this one? This one. It's not least so that's existence. Because we're looking at if they're attached or not, if they're existent or not. Okay? This one's gonna be a bit tough. For examine the shipping order for an authorized credit approval. I don't think you guys are gonna get this. 4.3. What is it? Oh, iPhone 10, you're right. Rights and obligation. So rights and obligations because right the rights of the credit approval. Good, good. Surprised me there. To examine the duplicate sales invoice for an indication of internal verification of quantity price, blah blah blah. Trace the balance to the accounts receivable master file. So what would that be? Yes, Sarah. Great. Accuracy and completeness. 4.5. Okay, accuracy. Good. Anything else? Not existent, because we're not looking at if the shipping document is there or not. How about this? A quantity. 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 What do you think? The quantity. The quantity, guys. Quantity. What assertion is that? The quantity. Let's guess. valuation, right? One assess if the quantity makes sense with it. Okay, so 4.6, last one. Tell me what it is. Again, I think you guys should know by now, completeness, because there's a word trace. Okay, so so maybe for the revenue, rev rec. So which one is rev rec in here, guys? Which one is relevant to rev rec? Which one is for rev rec? How about this one? Credit approval, right, for revenue. Sales invoice, and this one, right? Accounts receivable. So if there's two audit procedures, can you guys give me an audit procedure for this one? Tell me what would be an audit procedure. No, for this one, paying order. Correct. How about for this one? What does it do? It helps with okay, so go over this problem real quick. Can you guys take a minute to read it? Okay. Okay, so for this, maybe I'll go quickly over it, but Nadini completed the constitutional confirmation following the data, blah, blah, blah. So then the statistical sample was taken as follow, all accounts over 10,000, and then items under 10,000, items over 10,000. Okay. So what type of non-statistical sampling method did she use? So what would this be? What is it? What type of sampling is it? Which one is it? We're taking two groups, one above 10K and one below 10K. That's how the DNA is separated. So which one is it? You guys just tell me. And you guys tell me. Uh, it was direct. What do you mean, sorry, by direct? Directed sample selection. Okay. So directed sample selection is like, let's say you have 10 invoices, and then you say, look, I'm just gonna take 3 out of 10 of them because 3 of them are like 1 million, and all 7 rest are like 100K, right? But in this case, yeah, she is telling you like we're taking one that's above 10,000, and then the other one's like underneath 10,000. But um, she's she's doing two populations. There's still a methodology behind it, not just saying, "Oh, I'm taking that or that." So, what do you think it is? Because we're doing two different population, right? Yeah, so stratified. Stratified. Right. So in this case, there's one above 10K and the other one is below 10K. To explain the advantage and disadvantage of using stratified sampling for the Danforth paper company, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's say, so what could be the advantage, some of the advantage and some of these disadvantage. So these are pretty generic, so I can improve this precision and it's like imagine if most of the cells are below 10K, and then it just turns out that the one that you're selecting are all above like how much is it, 20K or something like that, right? So the fact that you have two different populations is more the samples will be more representative of the whole population itself. Okay, so disadvantage. So increased complexity, more, well, you need more planning. In this case, it looks simple, but still, like when you're doing it on a large scale, usually, in audit, um, there's a lot more precaution that you will have to take. And then also biased result, potentially, if if uh correctly. Yep. Okay, last question. Describe the process that would be used to evaluate the results of non-statistical sample. Consider both the direct application of the statistic found and the effect using a sample. So let's start with the first one would be, so let's say there's a misstatement found. What are we going to do about it? Yeah, that's the first question. So we found a mistake. What should you look out for? Right? So look at if there's a misstatement, is it just on maybe a subset of the accounts, or is it maybe everything that could be other accounts that could touch potentially? Okay. And so what we would also have to do is project onto if there's a misstatement found in the sample, you have to project it into the whole population to make sure that um, if if the misstatement is acceptable or not just a sample, but on the whole population. And finally, the last thing we'll do is that you would have to look at, well, the whole population. It would be mostly on the financial statement. How is that affecting if it's a qualified opinion or unqualified opinion? And so at the end of the day, you want to look at how does your error is applicable on the financial statements. Right, so that's audit. Okay. And so for the effect of using a sample, right? You would look at sampling risk, and like we talk a lot about the sampling risk. There's a lot of things that you can do afterwards to mitigate it. So you can do like additional procedure, increase sample size, yada yada. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this. So I gave a brief overview of it, right? So if you look at all of these, like the numbers are not too relevant. It's more about stratified sampling. Um, what is the advantage, disadvantage, and then if you do a misstatement, like what can you do to counterbalance it? Okay. So there's two more problems. I think we're just gonna do one. Uh, maybe this I'll let you guys do by yourself. Segregation of duties. Maybe this will be a bit more fun. And then this I'll let you guys do by yourself when you guys study a bit more. So now maybe just some more questions that could be like short for the finals. We could wrap it up with this. Okay. Yeah, so I'll post the answers to the ones that you have to do alone. So I'll post every answer, like but these are just my answers, right? So I don't think you guys have solutions to the book, and a lot of this is I really just take from the CPA book audit, and then I was like, oh well, this one might touch upon your midterm, your final, sorry, and so I use that um, for practice. Okay. So guys, I want you to answer for these ones. It doesn't require too much thinking. So just answer it, and this will show like how you're ready for the exam. So you need to test the following. Every purchase of order of 10K must be approved by the department head. What is your population to test this control? Yeah. So Sarah, right? 10K. So provide one example of how you could encounter a problem in testing this control due to sampling risk. Mm, that could be one of the mistake. Not sorry, no. That could be, but it wouldn't be sampling risk. So sampling risk is that it's not representing of the whole population. So if you take a sample that's too small, right? That is issue, but like before that, let's say, before even taking a sample that's too small, what other error can you make? And this is referring to the answer from before, right? So if your population is invoices are 10K, you would expect that, well, the invoices are all 10K. And so let's say you're taking a sample, even if your sample is small, but you're respecting your population, then it should be mostly fine. So before that, this was a bit tricky, but it was like more before even that. Like, what's the first step that could go wrong? But you are true in saying that if you're taking a sample too small, that could be a sampling risk. So what could be an error due to non-sampling risk? So what would be the answer for the third one? The auditor may misinterpret the evidence by, sorry, provide one example of how you can encounter a problem in testing this control due to non-sampling risk. Right, remember that non-sampling risk is not just the mistake, it's like how you're doing it. Right? So that could be a sampling risk. Because remember here, every purchase order must be approved by the department. So the non-sampling risk that one of the non-approved is slipped in. Okay. So even if an audit performs extensive tests of controls and finds no control weakness, they still have to perform substantive tests. Why is this rule in place? So you guys should always do substantive and test of controls, never uh, um, just one. Like what does test of control test? Yeah, so the effectiveness and test of substantive, it tests the FS, right? So here it could be like yes or no, are they effective? But here it's like quantitatively is the number accurate or reflective. Okay. The company policy states that a PO over 250K requires approval from the CFO. PO and approvals are done electronically. As an auditor, you sat down with the purchasing clerk, use a computer, create a purchase of 26K. You notice that the system required formal approval from the CFO before processing. What assertions that you test explain? Okay, so there's two. I need Droop. Droop, where you at? You're good at this. So say that purchase of over 200 requires approval from the CFO. So purchase order requires approval from the CFO. What would be approval from CFO? What restriction is that? Approval from CFO. go, guys. You guys know this. Come on. What's approval from the CFO? What assertion is that? Okay, so all right. No, that is rights and obligation. Okay, and also the fact that you guys are testing if it's above 250K and then you're using 260K, you're using the accuracy. Okay. Okay, so you're testing the existence of deferred revenue. All transactions in the account are very similar in size and risk. You decide to use probability driven sampling. Which method are you most likely to use and why? So since they're almost like all the same, um, they're all very similar in size and risk, you would use haphazard. And because you're using non-probabilistic. So haphazard is like pretty much just using like picking randomly ones. But yeah, haphazard, their judgment. Okay, 5. Shipping documents are matched with recorded revenues, and any unmatched shipping documents are reviewed. What assertion primarily does this procedure address? So we're going from the shipping to the recorded revenue, and any unmatched shipping documents are reviewed. So here we're talking about maybe if it's omitted or not. So what assertion would that be, guys? Completeness, yes. Okay, so now we're going to inquire but accounts receivable manager whether accounts receivable is receivable is likely to be collected. What assertion is this? AR. We're looking at AR. What would that be? Valuation, yes. To Sarah. You're testing the design of internal controls of your client. What is your client's control risk? It's quite simple. Control risk. So what is the most important characteristics of representative sampling? The sample. Yep. 9. Using MUS is better when testing for overstatement or understatement. Why? What do you guys think? Which one do you guys think it is? So MUS, don't forget that we're selecting based on the dollar amount. So you have more chances of selecting the one with the bigger dollar amount. So in that case, MUS is for, right? Okay. You're auditing a client with the fiscal year of June 30, 2020. You tested all the payroll expenses of the client. You're in the standard procedures you're going to perform to ensure that the accounts payable balance is not materially misstated as of June 30, 2020 are called what? So I think this goes back to Sarah, what we were discussing before. Like, what are we testing? Like when we're doing like block sampling. What procedure is it? What procedures, Sarah? Yes. So it would be cutoff testing. There you go. In your testing of internal controls, you have identified a significant deficiency. This will be included in which document? It would be management letter, or you call it internal control report. Cells occur that are not collectible. In order to avoid this situation, which preventive control should be in place? Right, it could be rights and obligation, credit, approval procedures, right? So the fact that we're not collecting is because maybe the client has bad not good credit, and so we would have to check for their credit if they're good or not. If you test both controls and the amount in the financial system is what is this approach strategy called? Controls and the amounts. Exactly, dual purpose test like that. Purpose, okay. If an auditor reviewing the client's organizational structure and assignment of authority, which is causal component, which causal component are we testing? What is it? You guys should know this. You guys know the four or five causal framework. B, control environment. Okay, in audio, what is kiting? It's when you okay. All right, two more questions, guys. You selected a sample of items from the client's fixed asset records and examined the items in the company warehouse. The test of the assertion is what? You examined it. You went and you examined it. Yes, Sarah. So that would be existence. Okay. Last question, guys. I'm going over time. 7 right now. You need to test the completeness assertions of accounts payable using sampling. Which sampling method would you use and how would you do it? Which one would you guys use? Sarah, where are you at? I need your answer. This question was for you, Sarah. Jupe, you want to come in and give a little support? What type of sampling would we be doing? Go, guys. Last question. What type of sampling? Well, exam's done in 1 minute. What's your last answer? What type of sampling is this? What type of sampling? What type of sampling is this, guys? Just give me something, or you get zero out of this question. Not direct sampling. It would be which one has the timing involved? Would be block sampling, right? So what you want to do is that you want to look at maybe the accounts payable that are due like at the year end. So you make sure that the liabilities are they paid or not, or if they're recorded, are they paid in the right period, right? So if you have accounts payable like December 29, well, maybe you don't have to owe them until maybe next year, right? So depending on where it is, you have to check if it's accurate or not. Okay. So I think that's the review. I try to go fast at the end because I know that attention span is about 2 hours and then it dies off. So do you guys have any questions for the final or anything? Yeah, so just honestly, like just look at my previous finals. They should be pretty accurate because I took previous finals to um, to do the questions as inspiration. So yeah, just look at that. Look at the PowerPoints whenever you don't understand what content there is, but there's literally not that much studying to do if you did the studying beforehand for the quizzes and everything. This should be the exam that you studied the least. Right? You could probably get a good grade if you study 3 days before. You just have to understand it. Right? So just know your audit procedures, stuff like that. Are we good, guys? Okay. So if that's it, you guys have a wonderful time. Send me questions if you need to. I'm still alive. I'll just be um somewhere else. I'm in show. So yeah, just send the questions and I'll try to help you as much as possible. Sounds good? All right. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.